Yep, so we can start.
A very good evening to one and all present here. Today, we all have gathered here to talk about innovating governance for a 30 trillion economy by 2047, which is ideally a tenfold economic growth that we are looking forward to. And like OP sir always says, that until and unless you aim for the higher, you will not be able to reach anywhere. So it is very important to understand what are the requirements that we'll be having as overall to reach this stage. So today we are here to talk about the changes that would be required and the key needs that India would have to reach this aim. Today, as the panelists, we have OP Agarwal sir, who will be also moderating the session. OP sir teaches the governance and public administration course along with the infrastructure and urbanization domains at ISPP. He is also the faculty in charge of understanding government program. He was a member of Indian Administrative Service from 1979 to 2007. He held several positions including Joint Secretary Training to the Government of India. We also have Shobna Rana. Ms. Shobna Rana is currently an advisor on content for Mission Karm Yogi Bharat, overseeing the creation of high quality e-learning content for capacity building within government structures. With over 2 decades of experience in international affairs, she has served with the United Nations in peacekeeping operations and held leadership position in academia and the private sector. We also have Tushar Meshram, if I am pronouncing it correct. Tushar sir is currently working as Chief Minister's Fellow with the Gujarat government. He is assigned to Sardar Patel Institute of Public Administration in Ahmedabad, where he is involved in improving institutional capacity for training and learning aimed at Class 1 and Class 2 officers of the state. He is an ISPP of class of 2020 alum of the PGP in public policy, design and management. We also have Nikita Meena. She is the program lead for the schools of specialized intelligence, Government of Delhi at the Education Alliance. She has over 6 years of experience in the development sector. Previously, she worked with Eklavya Foundation in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and Bihar. She is an ISPP class of 2023 alum of the Understanding Governance Executive Education Program. We are looking forward to having an enriching session. Over to OP, sir.
Thanks very much, Saloni. And welcome to all of you. I see a number of you who've come in online. Really a delight to see so many of you on this. As Saloni introduced, the topic is rather interesting. As you all know, India has articulated an ambition to grow from being an economy of about $3 trillion today to $30 trillion in the next 25 years. It's not just about GDP growth, but it's well-being in many respects. But GDP is one metric that is easy to use for comparison purposes. But this kind of a growth, people have often said that this is overly ambitious. But I, for one, have always believed that if you don't have ambition, you don't get anywhere. If you have an ambition of this sort, you may get close to it. But if you don't have that ambition, you will get nowhere close to it. So I think I am particularly very happy that this kind of an ambition has been articulated. We all hope that we will be able to reach that ambition. But one thing is very clear, that this ambition cannot be realized with business as usual. We can't go on the way we are doing it today. It has to be something much more than the normal course of things. So what we want to discuss today is if it's going to go beyond business as usual, what are the changes needed, particularly in the administrative machinery of the government, to be able to lead us to this kind of a growth? The example I like to always give is it the same skills which help us keep a ship stable in stormy waters vis-a-vis moving a ship at high speed in still waters? In stormy waters, you need people who don't take risks so that the ship stays stable. when the water is calm and you have to move ahead, you may have to move at much faster speed. You may have to take risks. It's also like driving on a racetrack versus driving on a terribly, a potholed road. What's the difference in the driver skills that you need in these two situations? So what I'm going to do is really look forward to listening from our panel on what do you think are the needs that the government system needs, particularly in terms of capacity building initiatives that will help get us the manpower, get us the capabilities to move India forward at much faster speed than we have in the past. With that, the way I would like to structure it for our panelists is I'll give you a minute each. Let me start with Shobna, then go to Tushar, then go to Nitika, but give you just about a minute each for you to tell us a little bit of what you would like to speak about. Just give us a little trailer, a kind of a little heading. And after that first round, once we know what's there for us to listen, I will go to each one of you and ask you to elaborate a little more. And then finally, depending on time, I may come back with some supplementary questions. And then finally, I'll do a little summary and pass it back to Saloni. That's the structure we'll follow today. So Shobna, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. And it's a wonderful, it's my pleasure to be here and wonderful to see all of you and our attendees who I hope will ask questions and engage with us. So for me, from the universe that I come from, which is working with and for the civil service capacity building, I would say the one very stark thing that we are addressing is an attitudinal shift in the working of the government and officials. Because for a very long time, we have, I think, had a sort of a chip on our shoulder, a colonial yoke, that systems were handed over to us, and those systems have continued until now. And I must say that this current government is the first time that we're looking at, what kind of civil service do we want? What kind of processes do we want? What kind of implementation of policies are best for us? So I think that attitudinal shift to know that a GDP rise is a responsibility of everyone, and how do we build the capabilities to get there? I think that's what I would like to focus on.
Thanks, Shobna. This is music to my ears, that you're focusing on an attitudinal shift, I think very badly needed. But Tushar, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you all for having me here. I would like to pick up from where Shobna ma'am has just started off the conversation with, and what I think would be a key element of driving our economy towards very high growth would be starting from an attitudinal shift when it comes to action. I would like our administration and also our larger citizen to look at the economy as something that also functions 24/7. I'm looking at the nighttime economy of India, not just from a regular 9 to 5 schedule, which we are so used to in terms of how we look at employment and being engaged as citizens and as administrators, but exactly a systems oriented approach towards having an economy that is functioning even beyond working hours, what we normally look at normal working hours. The reason I'm strongly in favor of this is we are much better in shape today in terms of our energy efficiency, in terms of becoming energy surplus also, and in terms of looking at how employability, the nature of employability is changing. There are people who can take up a job at any time and then contribute at any time during a 24-hour span. We cannot have limitations with respect to shut down establishments at a particular time of the night, just because it is not feasible for some people to think that it's not going to work. We will have to overhaul administrative systems, and we will have to encourage citizens to contribute 24/7. So this would be sort of my starting point.
Good, great. So 24/7 economy.
Yes,
That's interesting to hear what you have on this. Nitika, over to you.
Thank you, sir, and good evening, everyone. So, first of all, I would like to thank ISPP for giving me this opportunity. And regarding the Viksit Bharat 2047, I think I agree with Shobana ma'am here that one key change is the attitudinal change or the behavioral change that we're talking about. Apart from that, from my experience of working with various state governments, particularly in terms of education, I would say accountability and efficiency is something that has to be a key factor when we are working with, from class one officers to district level officers, block level officers to a school. So when I see that entire structure of government system, I would say it has to be accountability and efficiency are the key roles here for me. Yeah. Thank you,
Good.
sir.
So we'll hear from you more about how we can build accountability, how we can build efficiency, what kind of capacity building or what other needs are there to be able to bring this about. Great, great. Let me now go back to Shobna again. Shobna, you spoke about attitudinal shift. I think it's to my mind extremely important, but how do you think we can do this, or what are you doing on this? Good to hear that. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, it's a daunting challenge, and I came into looking into the Indian government after having worked with governments all over the world, in the most developed countries and in the least developed countries. And it's not a problem, the attitudinal one, just specific to us. But I found from global experience that countries that have had colonial pasts, struggle much more with a sense of identity than those who have not had that. So if we compare ourselves with Japan's civil service, nimble, ready, already contributing over $800 million to the global public finance system through the IMF, is a country that has been nimble and ready for the 21st century for a while. There was not a lot of identity crises they had to go through. So coming back to us, I work in my work, I deal with IAS officers at the very top which is my focus. A lot of it is our class C and D officials, for whom the entire government, system is something which has become automated. So you have a job, you have a set number of tasks, you come and do them, sometimes half-heartedly, but you do them, and that's the end of it. So I think the first thing needed to break apathy is a sense of validation for people who have actually never felt they matter. You just spend your entire day obeying a chain of command, depending where you are in the system. So what we're doing in our small way, we have our sister organization is a capacity building commission. But what we're doing in our small way by offering learning, e-learning and digital learning, is we're identifying everyone, the 1.5 crore officials in the system, mapping them to what they do, to what they may need. And for me, most importantly, engaging with them, not just on email but actually meeting them to find out how do we cut across, the perceived sense of arrogance of the senior bureaucracy and the perceived sense of helplessness of officials down the chain of command. So the attitude has to change in both those groups, because you are in it, and the number we're looking at, the 30 trillion, any country that plans on a big jump in GDP levels, the first thing it looks at is capacities. The first things it looks at are sectors where this will be delivered. So we are training, people in tax collection, customs, you name it, and we are in that industry. So the effort at the moment, and it is in its infancy, as you know, Dr. Agarwal, very well, the effort at the moment is just to understand where are the bottlenecks, where are the pain points, how do we validate all of the officials who work for citizens, with citizens every day? How do we motivate them to want to learn new skills? And then we'll take it from there. Because, if I talk to a junior officer in the government about a 30 trillion GDP in 2047 is mind-boggling for that person to even comprehend. So we are taking small steps. We are motivating senior officers within their departments, their ministries, to inculcate a culture of wanting to upskill and getting out of this. What I've said is a heritage where a system was given to us and it just continues, as you said, business as usual. I think it is going to be tough. I think it's going to take a lot of hard work, but we're pretty determined, as I think as the Prime Minister, his office is actually leading our initiative of learning. You know, his officials are taking courses from our platform all the time. So I would say that, you know, attitudinal change is not an overnight thing. And the first thing you need to make people want to do things differently is to understand the pain points of what it is that they're doing, which is making them feel a sense of apathy and lack of growth. I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think great points. I'll come back to you with a few more questions. Very interesting points that you've made, particularly about looking at people lower down in the hierarchy. I think that is something that has not had attention over the years. A lot of our capacity building efforts have been focused at the senior bureaucracy, with the result that a huge chunk has got left unattended. But I'll come back to you on this. Let me move to Tushar. Tushar, you spoke about this very interesting concept of a 24/7 economy. If you can tell us a little more of what that really means in your mind and how that can be brought about.
Yes, sir. Picking up from where Shobana ma'am left off, she said this very interesting statement that change will not happen overnight. So I believe that the past few years, we've realized that we don't want to be like the world's backend developer, and we don't want to do the service-oriented work for the rest of the economy. And the focus towards building and manufacturing and creating has actually brought us quite far. So we've started working on great ambitious infrastructure projects that will easily sort of serve us for the next 15-20 years, if not 40-50 years. So my aspiration is that all the infra that we're looking at, say road, rail, utilities for cities, if we are able to keep them occupied at sufficient levels wherein the population can continue to benefit from those operations, which is what I said, beyond normal working hours, I think we have an opportunity right there. In terms of how some sectors can really tap into this, to start with, for example, tourism and sports are two sort of potential sectors which I think might be able to take some sort of a lead. There can be certain attractions or certain events that can be equally, if not more, attractive at night. Racing, for example, there are some cities which have also done it. Chennai did something recently. They did it on public infrastructure, on their city roads. They were able to organize a racing event. Right? It generated quite a bit of attention as well. In some ways, I also see that logistics and commerce is kind of a 24/7 activity any which ways. A lot of cities, they prevent trucks and heavy vehicles from entering into city limits. So a lot of the logistics also operates in an interesting way, wherein they plan their arrival into a city when the limitations are not there. So then those trucks can come inside, right? So in a way, there is already a lot of it is set in motion about having 24/7 cycles wherein people and sectors are continuously working. I'm saying that we make it even more exciting and even more attractive for a lot of us common and ordinary folks also. So to consider contributing. People are now free to do more than one jobs. You can have one full-time job and one digital job. You don't have to be tied down to a geographic location to continue working or to contribute to the economy. If you wish to sit in a different location and you wish to avail services like a cup of coffee or a snack, I don't see any reason why a 3 a.m. cafe should not be able to serve you if you are still going to contribute, if you're going to have a meeting, for example, either in person or with distributed colleagues around the world. Right. So this is my idea about how having some sectors open can probably keep our economy going, while nothing else, no individual or no sector is prevented when they can contribute.
That means nothing really needs to shut down at 5 p.m. or something like that.
Exactly, sir.
Everything can be a kind of round. Now,
Yes.
while you were saying this and when you gave this idea initially, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, everything outside the government is 9 to 5.
Yes.
It's government that is 24/7.
Yes. Yes.
In the state where I worked in, I couldn't say as a district collector that I won't do something because the flood came after 5 p.m.
That's right.
Right. So we were, right from the beginning, we were told that you are on duty 24/7. And the first
That's
time
right.
I heard about this phrase of work-life balance was after I left the government.
Right.
The
Sir.
government, I couldn't even talk about it. I mean, there was
Right.
nothing of that sort. Anyway, good. I think that's a very interesting idea.
Right.
Keeping the economy going 24/7 is one way of really scaling up our economy.
Yes.
Nitika, you spoke about accountability and efficiency. So
Yes.
back to you.
So I think I will begin a little bit by telling what I'm currently doing. So currently I'm working with the Delhi state government here with the education department, and we're trying to see how can we improve the school quality at a larger system, largely including around overall planning for the strategies, doing teachers training, and largely the state governments there. So I would say, so it stems from there, that on a day-to-day basis, because then the challenges work at, okay, you have to think about the next 10-year vision. At the same time, we're talking about how it will, what changes it will have on a day-to-day classroom transaction. So it stems from the topmost level to a classroom level. So there, when I see it trickle down, then you see that there is a lack of motivation at all the levels. So when I talk about accountability, I mean, be it the topmost level people, because or be it the teachers, you see a lack of motivation. They don't have incentives. Like how sir you are saying that suppose a flood is coming after 5 p.m., you have to be available. Similarly, if a higher authority calls someone at the school or someone at a district level with some data, it doesn't matter whether a class is going on or some other thing is going on, they have to respond. The moment you get a call from someone in the government, you have to be on your toes. But for that, there is no separate incentive that is given. There is no motivation that they get, but rather you would see in a larger call, people sort of demotivating one another. The numbers are compared. Okay, this district is here. This district is performing over here. This particular block is doing well. This particular block, the numbers are really low. So that at majority of the times does not really work in the favor of the people who are actually working towards getting those numbers up, or putting their hard work into bringing that up. I would say that would be one. Then the other thing I would say in terms of efficiency, if I want to talk about, I would say we can use the digital space much more than what we are currently doing right now. I think this is something that we really need to tap in at a government level and at all levels. And when I talk about digital, I mean it's also in the classrooms and as well as in the government offices. Say one example, it would be for the file processes. I've seen in many government offices, the shift has been made. In some of the departments, the shift has been made, but in other departments, you still see people carrying a lot of filing systems some of the times, and that causes a lot of delays in the processes. So because there is a delay because of something as simple as getting a document signed, and that can always be turned into a digital system that where, okay, it might be done faster. You do not have to be in a particular space. Suppose if there is a tour going on, if there is a workshop going on, then it becomes easier. So it's not, will not be have to, I mean, physically the restrictions would be less. And these are the two things I would say largely in terms of government spaces.
Thanks, Nitika. I'll come back to you with something more on the use of digital space a lot more. But I think that's a very interesting point you made, very important point you made as well. But coming back to Shobna, I really liked your idea about looking at lower down efforts. And, my own experience in the government over all those years, I think the extremely important thing I found was if you're getting people lower down into some kind of a training program, to me, the most important thing was not so much the learning that you give out of that, but the sense of recognition you give to that person that you are an important member of this system. Over the years, they have begun to feel that they don't matter. Whether it's a peon in the government. Today, of course, you don't have peons really, but whether it's a lower divisional clerk or a section officer, these people don't have opportunities for training. You have the private secretary to a secretary, they have no opportunities for training, and they somehow feel demotivated.
Yeah.
And if you look down at the field level, particularly the constables, the patwaris, this level feels completely demotivated. They feel they're just there to carry out orders of their seniors, as you very rightly said. So I think the training for them is not just the learning, but also a message that you are important members. But to be able to do that, I have a little bit of a doubt on whether you can do it only through an online system, or whether it's necessary to have some kind of a blended system. So you bring them together face to face, because the value of that is going to be much more. Your thoughts on this? Tell me I'm completely wrong. I'll be very happy to hear that.
No, not at all. Actually, since I'm not from the government system myself, there are days I have felt very unvalidated and unimportant and shoved into a corner, because there's a culture, there's a jargon, there's a way that leadership is exercised, which I found I started fighting and I started questioning, which is not a smart thing to do. But nevertheless, I came with experience, and suddenly I felt quite stifled. So I can relate to that group C and D person, which is the first thing you need to do, because I can jostle for my relevance. Large groups of them can't. I think on your question of learning, so we are offering blended learning through IGOT, integrated our platform, that integrated government online training. But I find, technology has become a great equalizer in our country, in the sense that mobile phones, we all know, the data we all know, that people who are not able to, for example, be included in blended learning programs, because it's meant for mid and senior level people, very often can miss that blended program unless it's a part of their organizational, planning. But on a mobile phone, I can be on the metro, I can be on a bus or whatever, and I can learn. So, so that is, and the interesting thing is, I'm trained as a psychoanalyst as well, and I realized that there's nowhere else this training will be as handy as it is where I am and what I'm doing. Because a group C and a D would like to consume, for example, your course on public policy writing, not that she or he will ever have a chance to do it, but simply because they want to know that they work in a system where their bosses implement policy. So what is it all about, So we're trying to demystify. We use these words. We're trying to demystify, democratize. There are days I have my doubts that we're actually doing that, but we are trying. We are trying, because the moment we pocket this course is for Group A and these courses are for Group B, we are not being democratic. We're just kidding ourselves. But Group C, D, young people who are just joining government, and they have 30 years or so ahead of them, are aspirational folks. They are not some dead weights who just sit around and take files to be signed and the bells ring and they go running to supply tea and coffee. They actually want to do something that their parents' generation was not able to do. So I like to catch those moments where those aspirations are expressed. They're muted, If we go to a ministry to see a joint secretary or additional secretary, and then we want to talk to the learners in that particular ministry, first of all, it has to be planned and sort of directed. But there's a muted response. However, there is a response of some aspiration of what they would like to see on the platform, areas they want to learn. One of them said to me the other day, one young official, that, ma'am, AI is the sexy thing. Everybody is talking about AI. Is anybody talking about responsible AI? The responsible use of AI, the dangers of AI. Now, Of course, those questions are being addressed at senior levels, and there's a whole AI mission. But the fact that this young man was asking those questions means he's thinking about it. So we also tend to underrate intellectual capabilities of the now young staff that's coming in, because we know that they're supposed to be a certain way, and they're trying to, in their own quiet way, break that and say, sorry, but Professor Agarwal's course is fantastic and I'm going to take it, and no one's going to tell me I can't, because I'm going to learn something. But it's a very delicate balance between assuring them that they have to follow a particular system, which we are again working on trying to improve so that there's a better exchange between superiors and subordinates. But at the same time, I like to encourage these aspirational streaks and this sense of being given free content which can upskill them. And I tend to sort of say, just speak up within the confines of what is professionally appropriate. Please speak up and tell us, because if you tell us, we'll be able to do something for you. And of course, now we are also in trying to look for ways to incentivize. If we're mandating learning or offering learning, how do we incentivize it? All those discussions are happening at the policy level, but nevertheless, I had two-point focus when I came into my assignment. One was Group C and D, because there's a lot on offer for senior level officials, including their lifestyle, their perks. If you look at it in total. And second was our training institutions, our central and our state training institutions, because I think that's where again there's talent, but apathy, because that talent goes unacknowledged. Not enough resources to convert classroom learning into digital learning. So I thought that if those two things and our engagement with states, which Niti Aayog is doing, and we're of course now entering into it as well, I thought these are the three things on which this mission of ours actually will be a success. It will be motivating these groups, that will encourage them to do their work in a way that can then plod us to higher economic growth. So I find C&D people very interesting, and I get a chance sometimes to visit their homes and talk to their families. And I think that they are a constituency we should really be working very hard for, I feel.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely right. It's a neglected group, but they are the biggest support system that we have had. And I can confess there's one of my ex-ministers who later became a chief minister. When I met that person, I'm not giving you the gender also, just to keep that. But the one thing I mentioned was your next election victory doesn't depend on how good is your chief secretary.
Yeah.
It depends on how good is your patwari, your constable, your agriculture extension worker.
Yes.
That is the level which is your citizen interface of the government.
Absolutely.
And if you work well, if they work well, you get votes. Not if your chief secretary works well.
That's right. Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Over to you, Tushar. Tushar, your 24/7 economy, I'm taking advantage of. I took a little peep at the kind of questions that have come up. So I thought I'd pose that also to you through some of these questions. People have talked about 24/7 economy versus mental health issues. Do you see a linkage? Do you mean 24/7 means people are working 24/7, or is there something else you had in mind?
I advocate for mental health also. So I've had my own issues with it. I've seen other people also deal with it. And I completely am in support of an individual's right to exercise the decision to stop working also when they feel like it is too much, or when they feel like it is not serving any purpose. What I mean by a 24/7 economy is having a framework that allows for establishments and individuals to have the freedom to exercise when they would like to operate. As simple as that. This is by no means a compulsion for a business or an individual or a company organization to continue working for the sake of it, right? Everybody's vision for a good $30 trillion economy is going to be different. What we should be able to agree on is that different paths towards a high functioning GDP economy can also converge. So mental health is absolutely essential. It is something that we'll also have to maybe somewhere factor in also in terms of our human potential, that our population is well cared for. There are frameworks and there are guidelines to ensure that they are not overworked, they are not overburdened, and they are also able to contribute within the limits of their abilities and within the limits of the time that they are also devoting. So this would be my straightforward sort of answer to that.
I mean, I guess what you meant is when the economy functions 24/7 or a service is provided 24/7, it doesn't mean that the same person is working 24 hours.
That's right.
You have shifts, you have other ways in which, as long as the service is available 24 hours, who's delivering it is a second issue.
That's right.
It's not that, so that's probably what you had in mind.
Yes, yes.
Nitika, using digital space much more, you spoke about some ministries where the filing system has become digital, others that have not.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about this? I know some, the interesting thing that struck me when I walked into some senior officers' rooms in some of the ministries is that there is no file on the person's table. There's no one sitting in front of that person. What I've been used to is you go into a joint secretary's room, there's either a pile of files or there's a crowd of people in front of that person. I found nothing. And the first reaction was, this guy has no work. What is your reaction? Because obviously things have changed.
Yeah. So I think I've had similar two extreme examples, if I can give you. One is I was just talking to this IS officer. I mean, we met at a conference and we were just discussing something, and he just mentioned that, oh, I've been in this conference for the past 3 days. So when I go back to my office, I will have a big pile of files. And I asked him that, how are you so sure? He's like, and I can't even count by the numbers. I'll have to weigh them in kgs to know how much files they have. We were just joking about it that, oh, I'll just, maybe gift you a weighing machine so that you know how much files you have. That was just one example. The other extreme is I went to a director's office one day for some other work, and there was not even a single file. So I took the liberty of asking him there that, and he just asked me to wait for like 5 minutes so that he was wrapping up some work. And I just asked him that, I mean, there are no files. And he said, yeah, because everything has gone digital now. And these two examples are not, it's not like one example was 10 years ago and the other example was, this is in a difference of, say, I would say 6 months. It's just that these are two completely different ministries and state departments in one system, and that is how I've seen the difference. So it's just that he's like, okay, he's reading a file. If he agrees, he'll just click next, and that submits. So that's how somewhere that, okay, now this thing has happened. And then I was talking to him about his experience of everything gone digital. And I mean, of course, there are a lot of pros and cons that one can talk about and can easily find on the internet if one wants to read about all of that. But I think I do believe that in your day-to-day life, and when you're talking about systems and efficiency, this does provide a better edge. Because once you see that a person, if you can just see like a 10 kg document, one has to read through. And at the same time, because now we're also used to in our emails and inboxes and messages, it's also where we as a whole, as a community, is developing towards. Everyone is used to seeing messages on WhatsApp, on emails, on inboxes, rather than just going through the file work anymore. I think that is a shift we also need to bring in our workspace, which we have seen in the corporates more so, but comparatively less in the government structures. Maybe that is one change. And accordingly link it with I would say, the capacity building of the government officials as well. Because, I mean, if I can just take Shobna ma'am's example here, this also needs an attitudinal shift. But that when we see a clear table, it does not necessarily mean that they don't have a work. It's just that the nature of work, or maybe how we are doing the process of the work, is what has shifted. So that is where I'm talking about the shift and the work. Yeah.
Good, Nitika. I think we should give an opportunity to some of the questions which have come up on the Q&A. We should be responding to some of them. But a little point that I'll make to you, Nitika, is, unlike in the corporate sector, I think what is extremely important in government is good institutional memory. it's extremely important to know why we did certain things 20 years ago, so that we can today understand why things are happening in a certain way. That institutional memory in a government system is extremely important. And I'm not sure that emails exchanged through personal emails or WhatsApp messages allows that institutional memory to stay.
Yeah.
Why did my predecessor do something in a way he did it? Am I wiser than that person, or is that person wiser than me? I think this is the little difference you must remember in government, that do these digital systems allow institutional memory? Certainly, emails and WhatsApp messages don't. I've seen this in the World Bank. It's a terrible system. I didn't know what my predecessor did. My successor doesn't know what I did. Because these email IDs are very personal. And when the person leaves, all that memory is gone. So you can't take the risk of no institutional memory in the government system. I think that's going to be very, very risky.
Yeah.
I've
Sir,
heard this at the Niti Aayog also from many of the officers. We have very bright youngsters, but they all function on email, and we don't know why something happened the way it did.
So maybe that gives us a gap on which we can further work upon.
So that's what. Some areas can work well on that. Something which is very operational, virtual day-to-day, those things can happen. But when it comes to certain policy decisions or certain longer-term decisions, I think institutional memory is critical. You can't afford to not have that in a government system. That was the beauty of files, I have a lot of respect for files. The mechanism was bad.
Yeah.
If you have a 10-kilo file, you don't have to read all the 10 kilos. You just have to read the last few pages to get a sense of what's on that file. But I had a lot of respect for the filing system. And if that can get properly replicated in a digital system, I would have all respect for that. But I don't think shortcuts would necessarily be the best thing to happen. But with that, let's go on to the some of the questions that have come. Saloni, you want to pick some of them? I think there are 21 questions. We may not be able to do all. But if you can
Sure,
quickly...
The biggest drivers of this economy future can be educational foundation and job creation. What are your proposals on infusing energy into that?
Anyone wants to take that on?
I'm not sure I understand the question completely. Energy?
Energy into education and what is the other thing?
Job creation. Educational foundation and job creation is the requirement for the future of the economy. So what are the proposals to infuse energy into that? So probably motivate that in a way.
I think, do you want to take it, or Ankur, or you want me to? I think off the top of my head, I think I understand what the questioner is thinking. And I think it's a very, very intelligent question, because it's actually asking for two things. One is our education system, as we aspire to become a Viksit Bharat, is it ready to make us not only competitive and ready for this country, but to also be part of a global employment pool? So what is the readiness of our education system and access to a sound education opportunity? And what was the second thing? Job creation. Yeah. So job creation. So as far as government is concerned, ours is a very focused capacity building exercise. There are set employment parameters, and people come in, large numbers apply, a small number are taken. I think the private sector and other non-profits and others have begun to think about, for example, let's take public policy. I've set up 2 schools of public policy of my own. And what was asked to me by the vice chancellor of those institutes and potential students was, what about my employment? Where do I get placed? Because it's not a field like medicine or engineering. It's still a relatively new field in India. And the first question is placement. And rightly so. If you've spent 15, 20, 25 lakhs on a master's degree in public policy, you need to know what you can do. So I think one of my responses to this would be an education system which is not just a business, but it offers quality education to youngsters who are, I think, in our country, the most brilliant youngsters I've ever met. That is number one. And I think number two is that we create alternative fields of specialization. For example, mine is conflict resolution and war crimes. And I found whenever I was, investigating a war crime anywhere in the world, there was nobody from South Asia who was part of that team, forensic or otherwise. So we need to start thinking very seriously, and the private sector has the financial resources to drive job creation in a way perhaps government doesn't, academia probably doesn't, because of sheer numbers. But I think we need to have people who open up fields, new fields for young people, which would do well not just in India, but which would connect them. For example, there's a conflict, a delegation from India should go as part of an investigative team, or then recommend prosecution for
Shobna, I think we should get on to the next question.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Saloni,
Sorry,
you
but
want
that
to
was
take
my-
something else?
Yes, sir. When people are carrying out their daily task without motivation or incentive to be innovative, unlike in corporate environment where innovation might be recognized by pay hike, why would they change their attitude? Here they receive their pay and yearly raises regardless. So does performance-based increment catalyze attitude shift?
Saloni, you went far too fast for me to even follow what you said.
Sorry, sir. I'll just repeat. When people are carrying out their daily tasks without motivation or incentive to be innovative, unlike in corporate environment where innovation might be recognized by pay hike, why would they change their attitude when they are getting paid and having yearly raise regardless of having innovation or not? So does performance-based increments catalyze attitude shift?
Anyone wants to take that? Tushar, Nitika?
I think it's
No?
a very long question. Dr. Agarwal, can you simplify the question?
Achha, let's go to the next question.
It's a little long for us to follow.
Just a second.
Actually, Saloni, why don't you do one thing? I think I'm able to see these questions. So let me pick up some of them. I don't think we can do all of them. There is a question this is by Avik Bhattacharya. Blended learning can help, but given the hierarchy in public organizations, how much of the training can a peon take back to the table? The Sahib calls the shots, right? Yes, the Sahib does call the shots. I think the use of the word Sahib is a little...
It's not anymore.
It's not in good taste. You're not saying it with, there are in any organization, you have seniors, you have juniors, but I don't think that really is necessary. But you have juniors, you have seniors, the seniors do call the shots. But at the same time, training and motivation will help the peon perform better in whatever he's asked to perform. And I've seen that happening. I've seen that happening in many situations. So I think that is very valuable. Then we have, I'm going to some other question on, there's a question to Tushar. It's by an anonymous attendee. Recently, Australia guaranteed a right to disconnect law that allows employees to ignore work-related communication after hours. So when we speak about 24/7 flexible working timings, how should we focus on balancing the mental health of employees? This is something that I had asked you earlier. But
Yes.
Tushar, do you want to comment on this? Is it the same person working 24 hours or what's happening?
No. I mean, like we had discussed earlier, sir, what I would like to pitch for is having systems that allow individuals and establishments to have the freedom to decide if they want to work beyond what we classify as normal working hours. Australia is far ahead of us in terms of labor laws. They've already guaranteed a lot of safety nets for their employees, which is why introducing a law like this was very easy for them, right? And they also, I'm sure that they're also fairly productive within the hours that the employees are constantly working in. So for us, maybe we can take a leaf out of some of these progressive labor laws, wherein the individual's productivity is emphasized more than the number of hours or the set duration of hours.
Okay. Let me move to another question by Rajiv Dutt. I think that's a very interesting one, Rajiv. Could the panelists touch upon the institutional requirements to become a $30 trillion economy? Anyone?
Well, I mean, accountability, transparency, following rule of law. But I would add to these very traditional and universally accepted ones, competitiveness with deep humility. And maybe the two don't go together, but I think in our case, we're on our way up. There's no way we're coming down. So we need to be competitive, but at all levels of our life, we need to be persuasive and aspirational, but humble.
Maybe I think those are great points, Shobna. I would add one more to that. I think we have far too much fragmentation today in our structure.
Yeah.
And I would say more integration within our institutional system. I, for one, have not come across any other country where transport is across 5 ministries in the government of India.
Yeah.
Or energy is across 4 ministries in the government of India.
Yeah.
So that would be my response to Rajiv. But Rajiv, great question. Great question. Let me go on to some others. There's another one from Shubho Sengupta. The question is to me. It should have been to Shobna. What was capacity building like
we
25 years?
Yeah, he's my colleague, so he's addressing it to
So he should be asking you, what was capacity building like 25 years ago or 50 years ago? The only thing I'll say is we didn't have IT at the same scale as today. The capacity building then was a lot more of, face-to-face than digital. I don't know if you would agree with that.
No, I agree. 100% correct you are. And maybe it was simpler time, but less aspirational. The only thing, Dr. Agarwal, I'll add here is, when you're good at something, generally you don't need to talk about it or highlight it too much. I think as we're increasing our footprints exponentially in the IT sector and digitally, we should not boast about it too much, but ensure that it's absolutely 100% at all times working and not letting us down and systems not crashing. Not that can't happen, but I think a bit more understated, like promise less and deliver more sort of approach would really help us in terms of why, because there are many people who are not still getting it and still buying it. So maybe we just need to, make sure that people really get literate and on page, and then we can tell the world what we are and what we do.
Actually, I'm sort of really happy to see so many questions having come up. I don't know, Dhruva, how much additional time can you give us? Otherwise, what we can try and do is answer as many of them separately online, rather than answering them. We can type out answers to many of them. If you can give us a few more minutes, I think we can take up a few more questions. Otherwise, I'll have to pass it back to Saloni because time is really up. But what we will do is we will respond to all these questions through a typed answer. Is that okay? Great.
Sure, we can
thanks
take
everyone
up till
to the panel.
6:05 if you want.
Sorry?
We can go until 6:05 if you want.
Okay, another 5 minutes. Okay, if it's another 5 minutes, let me try and take up one or two other questions. This is a good one. Anonymous attendee again. With the goal time for 2047, it is really uncertain about who will lead the country at that time. How does this mission surpass the political effect? Anyone?
Sorry, I didn't get the second part of the question.
See, basically, I mean, what he's trying to say is that the
Mission
target is for
2047.
2047.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the same political government possibly in 2047.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of take that into account?
I'll very quickly say, some of us have lived for now half a century or more. at least Dr. Agarwal and I have on this panel. So governments come and governments go, and leaders find their way, not always meritoriously, with the honorable exception of this Prime Minister, who did not have political or financial backing to find his way to become the Prime Minister. But you see, leadership is what the younger generation must seriously start thinking about, and come into the political fray and try to get their hands dirty. Because my prediction, and I may be totally wrong, that going forward in 2047, we'll have a technically savvy, highly educated, cosmopolitan, yet very deeply rooted in the Indian culture type of leader. Hopefully a woman, but a man will also do. So I think that the next generation, we have sort of had our own, we have seen leaders come and go. So whether it's this dispensation or another dispensation, India, is on the move, and by 2047 will be on the Security Council as a permanent member. I don't know how many trillions, but we'll be rich enough to not only support ourselves, but also give money to the global economic system. So yeah, you guys who are young in the audience should be thinking about this.
Let me add a little bit to this. You see, ambition is, any government, when it articulates an ambition, it doesn't necessarily have to be within its political term. We made a commitment to become net zero by 2070.
Right.
Most countries around the world have agreed to net zero by 2050. No country's political government will be in power in 2050 also. So, but the point that usually happens is good goals, good ambitions will never be ignored by the succeeding government.
Right.
And in India, we are pretty fortunate that despite governments having changed, parties having changed, we've had a fair degree of uniformity in our policies. There have been few occasions, one of which that comes to mind is 1991, when we went for massive liberalization. Yeah. But other than that, broadly, initiatives of a previous government have been taken up by the succeeding government. So I think it's perfectly fine to articulate an ambition for 2047. And I can't believe that a new government that comes in, even if it's a different party, will not take it forward. Okay, I think we end with that. Let me pass it back to Saloni, but my promise remains that we will send a typed answer to most of the other questions that have come. Dhruva, you'll have to sort of see how we can do that technologically. It's not going to be possible right now, but are there ways in which we can save these questions and answers and type out responses to them? Okay, with that, Saloni, over to you.
Indeed, this was a very enriching discussion, I believe, and a lot of ideas as to how, as a young policy scholar, we can work towards contributing to this 30 trillion ambition. So the discussion started with OP sir mentioning about how in stormy water we want somebody who takes the ship to stability, wherein in still water we want somebody who wants to take risk and move forward faster. And to this, after this understanding, our panelist Shobna ma'am referred about how we need an attitude shift to have our own identity set apart from the colonial identity that India had. And in that, how it is important that officials are given valid sense of validation in their work, so they have motivation to actually work towards building something new that than what is already set. To this, Tushar sir also mentioned it. Economically, it is important that India has a 24/7 working economy, which would work towards making India a bigger and a larger country. And also he mentions that how right to choice to stop working will also play a very major role to ensure mental balance as to work balance for individuals. And Nitika ma'am also mentioned about accountability and efficiency that is required in the government so as to work in a better way with understanding that it is important that we accept that digital space will play a very important role in building this 30 trillion economy. And so this indeed was a very enriching discussion, and I thank all the panelists for being here and helping us understand everything. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to all the attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Shobna, we must meet.
Yes, soon, very soon.